She rested her head gently on his broad shoulder, letting the quiet warmth of his body radiate through her alien senses with a gravity stronger than any she had ever encountered among the stars. Around them, planets traced their silent, precise orbits, moons rotated in slow arcs, and distant suns flickered with an ancient brilliance that seemed almost deafening against the black expanse of space. Yet none of it, the swirling nebula, the luminous arcs of light from distant worlds, or the slow, perfect revolutions of planets, held any sway over her attention. All of it became mere background to the singular, unshakable force beneath her, him. Her bioluminescent hair floated freely, drifting across his chest and shoulders, glowing softly as it caught the reflected light of orbiting planets and stars, arcs of energy interweaving with the faint warmth of his skin. Every pulse of her luminescence seemed to synchronize with the rise and fall of his chest, each breath and heartbeat forming a rhythm older than galaxies and more grounding than any celestial body she had ever observed. She had traversed supernovae that flared violently across the void, navigated asteroid belts capable of pulverizing entire colonies, and witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations in her long journeys. She had calculated the lifespans of dying stars, tracked black holes' event horizons, and measured the gravitational pull of unseen cosmic anomalies. Yet none of these phenomena had ever anchored her in the way the presence of this human did. Every vibration of his muscles, the subtle shift of his posture as he adjusted slightly to give her a more comfortable resting place, every micro-movement of his hands cupping her gently spoke a language that needed no translation: safety, constancy, and care. In the midst of an uncaring universe, she felt a gravity far stronger than any planetary pull, one that drew her in, held her steady, and made her feel entirely known and entirely home. Outside the observation deck's translucent panels, planets revolved with hypnotic precision, arcs of reflected light tracing paths that almost seemed choreographed for them. Every moon, every streak of cosmic dust, every glimmering fragment of a distant asteroid field contributed to the silent spectacle. Yet it was all secondary. The true drama, the real marvel of this universe, existed right here, in the orbit of their shared presence. She pressed herself closer, feeling the heat of his body, the firmness beneath her cheek, and the subtle rise and fall of his chest beneath her hand. Her fingers traced the gentle contours of his arm, memorizing every line and ridge, committing the feel of him to memory. It was a connection that required no spoken words, a language older than civilizations, older than light itself, a language that spoke directly to the core of her being. Every breath, every pulse, every subtle adjustment became an axis around which her entire perception of the universe pivoted. She tilted her head slightly, inhaling the faint warmth of his skin, a subtle scent that mingled with the mechanical and recycled air of the station, and exhaled slowly, letting herself sink deeper into him. The bioluminescent strands of her hair floated across his shoulders, arcs of light glimmering like distant stars caught in motion, and she marveled at how the vast, indifferent void outside could feel so secondary to the simple gravity of human presence beneath her. Even the most violent cosmic storms she had witnessed, the flares of dying suns, the collapse of planets under gravitational strain, had not provided the intensity of grounding she felt here. She adjusted slightly herself, pressing her entire form more fully against him, letting her weight sink into the steady warmth he radiated. Her glowing strands wrapped loosely around his arm and across his chest, weaving arcs of living light that pulsed in time with his steady heartbeat. Every instinct she had honed for survival across centuries of space travel, the constant alertness, the calculation of threats, the vigilance against unknown dangers, was rendered irrelevant. All that mattered was this orbit of intimacy, This private universe contained entirely in the simple act of resting against him. The planets outside continued their revolutions in hypnotic arcs. The distant stars flared and faded with a slow, timeless rhythm, yet all of it felt almost ceremonial, as if the universe itself recognized the gravity of what had formed here. Time became a secondary consideration. Seconds stretched into moments that felt eternal, measured only by the rise and fall of his chest, the warmth of his skin beneath her, and the quiet pulse of his life that resonated through her alien senses. Her fingers trailed along the contours of his arm and shoulder, memorizing the subtle movements that expressed care, patience, and constancy. Even her luminescence seemed to respond to him, pulsing in gentle arcs of soft light that reflected off the observation panels, painting them both in a private constellation visible only to themselves. She tilted her head slightly, pressing her cheek more firmly against his shoulder, and exhaled fully, surrendering completely to the orbit of his presence, to the gravity of being entirely known and entirely accepted. The universe outside continued its infinite ballet, with planets tracing silent paths, stars flickering, and cosmic dust drifting lazily across the void. Yet she felt utterly untouchable, anchored in a way that no celestial body could ever replicate. She discovered, in this simple act of leaning into him, a force more powerful than any supernova, more consistent than the spin of any planet, and infinitely more beautiful than any galaxy. Connection, presence, trust, love. She allowed herself to melt entirely into him, feeling the orbit of his warmth, the rhythm of his life, and the unspoken promise that, in this boundless universe, she had found a true constant, a home she could carry with her no matter how far she traveled among the stars. He felt the tremor of her grip tighten as she pressed against him, her alien form quivering slightly with every pulse of the chaotic sky above. The falling suns painted the horizon in violent streaks of molten gold and crimson, and the occasional flare of violet light from distant nebulae streaked through the void like cosmic lightning. She smelled the ozone and heated gases of distant stars colliding with planetary fragments, a scent utterly foreign, yet intoxicating in its intensity. But she ignored it all, burying her head deeper into the curve of his shoulder. His arms wrapped around her protectively, instinctively holding her closer, as if the human mind alone could tether her to something constant in this maelstrom of light and heat. Her bioluminescent hair glowed faintly, threads of light weaving across his chest and shoulders, reflecting the burning suns above. She shivered slightly, though whether from fear, awe, or the raw heat of the cosmic display, he could not tell. Every subtle vibration of her body against his, every small tremor in her alien muscles, resonated with the rhythm of the universe, as if she were simultaneously part of the chaos and entirely separate from it. He leaned down slightly, pressing a soft kiss to her temple, and felt the tension in her form ease just enough to allow her to rest more fully against him. Her luminescent strands wove over his arm like ribbons of living light, pulsing softly in tandem with her heartbeat, and he marveled at the strange, radiant beauty she exuded even in the midst of such destruction. The ground beneath them vibrated faintly as fragments of distant planets streaked past, colliding and shattering in silent explosions far above the atmosphere. He could feel her tiny, alien hands clinging to his clothing, digging in with an intensity that conveyed more than words ever could. She exhaled softly into his chest, a sound so delicate it was nearly lost beneath the roaring light of the sky. Yet he felt it reverberate through him, anchoring him in the gravity of her presence. She was unlike anything he had ever encountered, a creature of luminous grace and raw emotion, yet fragile in the human sense, needing grounding, needing connection, needing him. And he was determined to provide that.
As the celestial fireworks raged, her body instinctively leaned into his, moving as if drawn by an invisible tether that only existed in the shared space between them. He could feel the warmth of her, the pulse of her life force beneath his hands, and it was unlike anything he had ever measured, vital, raw, and profoundly intimate. The alien physiology he had once only studied in sterile laboratories now pressed against him, glowing strands and warm flesh communicating in a language older than thought, older than light itself, a language of trust, of surrender, of absolute presence. He tightened his arms, drawing her closer, willing her to feel the security of human constancy, the gravity of being fully held, fully seen, and fully safe amidst a universe that seemed bent on chaos. She tilted her head slightly, pressing her cheek against the line of his neck, and he could feel the soft shimmer of her bioluminescence brushing against his skin. The alien glow pulsed in delicate waves, arcs of radiant energy mirroring the streaking suns above, each pulse conveying the depth of emotion she could not articulate with words. Her hands clutched at his shoulders and back, anchoring herself to him as if the simple act of contact could stave off the cosmic storm around them. Every movement she made was instinctively mirrored by his own, a delicate dance of care and protection, an unspoken conversation that bridged species, physiology, and experience. The sky continued to collapse into colors that defied definition, falling suns tearing across the horizon, meteors carving trails of incandescent fire, and planetary fragments colliding in silent explosions. Yet, inside the gravity of his arms, she felt weightless, as if the chaos of the cosmos had shrunk to irrelevance. Her heartbeat, which she had learned to regulate over centuries of alien training, had accelerated in response to the spectacle, but his presence grounded her, pulling her into a rhythm that was steady, reliable, and unshakable. He could feel the faint quiver of her body through her grip, the subtle undulation of muscles beneath her luminescent skin, and it filled him with a sense of responsibility, awe, and reverence. Minutes stretched into what felt like eternity. Her alien senses, capable of detecting the faintest tremors of star systems and interstellar radiation, seemed to focus entirely on him, her body drawn into the orbit of his presence. She exhaled again, a soft sigh that carried relief, awe, and trust all at once. In that moment, the violence of falling suns, the destruction of distant worlds, and the brilliant chaos of the heavens became a mere backdrop to the gravity she felt in his arms. She had traversed galaxies, survived catastrophes that could annihilate entire species, yet never had she encountered a force so unyielding, so grounding, so irrevocably powerful as the quiet, steadfast presence of a human willing to hold her when the universe itself seemed to fall apart. His hands moved lightly over her shoulders, along the curve of her spine, and he could feel the subtle warmth of her body relax against his touch. The alien bioluminescence pulsed softly, arcs of light wrapping around his hands like threads of living energy, and he could sense the trust radiating through her, the surrender that said without words, "I am yours to hold, I am safe in your gravity, I am here with you." Outside, meteors streaked past, planetary fragments collided, and the sky erupted in a kaleidoscope of suns burning and dying. Yet inside the orbit of their embrace, all of it faded to insignificance. Here, in the simple gravity of human touch, she had found home, sanctuary, and the only constant in a universe bent on destruction. Every subtle movement of her, every pulse of her luminescence, every quiver of alien muscle became a language unto itself. He held her closer, his own heartbeat sinking unknowingly to hers, forming a rhythm older than light, older than time, older than the very cosmos they floated within.
And as another falling sun streaked across the horizon, igniting distant clouds of cosmic debris in fiery arcs, she clung tighter to him, not from fear of the heavens, but from the knowledge that the true gravity, the force that mattered above all stars, was in the orbit of their bodies, their trust, and their shared presence. The sky above continued its violent, incandescent ballet, suns streaking across the void in arcs of molten gold, crimson, and violet. Yet she hardly noticed, pressed against him with a weightless intensity that anchored her far more effectively than the gravity of any star or planet. Every pulse of light, every streak of burning matter, every collision of planetary fragments became peripheral to the deep, unshakable orbit she had found in the human holding her. Her alien senses, normally so attuned to detecting the faintest gravitational anomaly or cosmic fluctuation, now focused entirely on him. The steady rise and fall of his chest, the warmth radiating through his skin, and the subtle, rhythmic pulse of his heartbeat beneath her hands. It was as if the chaotic universe outside had slowed, paused, or even yielded, bending to the silent gravity that existed in this perfect, intimate moment. Her glowing strands of hair floated over his shoulders and chest, arcs of luminescence that reflected the fiery spectacle above and created a private halo around them. The colors of the falling suns caught in her bioluminescence, turning her hair into a cascade of radiant golds, deep reds, and flashes of violet. She pressed her cheek more firmly into his shoulder, letting her warmth blend with his, her alien body seeking equilibrium in the constant, tangible human presence. She felt the subtle tension in his muscles as he instinctively shifted to accommodate her more fully, a careful adjustment that conveyed as much trust and intimacy as any words could. He had learned through years of exploration and survival that the universe could be unpredictable, even hostile, but this moment, the quiet gravity of holding her, was a stability that could anchor even the most chaotic cosmos. Her hands moved along his torso, tracing arcs that seemed to mirror the revolution of planets overhead, fingertips brushing lightly against his skin as though memorizing the contours and rhythms of human physiology. Each touch, each subtle shift in her alien muscles resonated deeply with him. He could feel her body reacting to the heat, to the flashes of suns above, to the micro-vibrations of distant meteor impacts. Yet the effect was not fear, it was trust, pure, raw, and complete trust. And in that trust, he found something unexpected, the gravity of being needed, the profound anchoring that only comes when another being allows themselves to surrender fully into your presence. Outside, meteors streaked across the heavens, planetary debris collided in silent arcs, and distant suns flared in bursts of energy that could incinerate entire worlds if one were unlucky enough to be nearby. But she clung to him with a fierce, unrelenting intimacy, and in that embrace he felt the universe shrink, collapse into irrelevance. Her pulse, normally steady, fluttered slightly in response to the intensity of the cosmic display, and he felt it through her hands and the curve of her body, a delicate rhythm that required his own presence to stabilize. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head, letting his arms tighten subtly, and she responded immediately, leaning into him, her bioluminescent strands glowing brighter, arcs of light wrapping around his arm as if seeking to anchor him in return. Every instinct she had honed over centuries, calculating trajectories of interstellar debris, predicting the flare cycles of unstable suns, and monitoring the gravitational interplay of multiple star systems, had been supplanted by a simpler, more profound awareness, the human beneath her. He became the center of her universe, the axis around which all her focus turned. Even the most catastrophic events playing out in the heavens, the collision of planetary fragments, the flares of dying suns, the streaking meteors, were nothing compared to the gravity of being held, of being completely known and entirely dependent on a single steady presence. She felt herself orbit him completely, her body drawn by the invisible, undeniable force of trust, intimacy, and connection. He could feel the subtle heat of her alien body, a warmth unlike any human physiology radiating against him. Her bioluminescence pulsed in time with her heartbeat, and for a moment he felt it as if the stars themselves were echoing her rhythm, a reflection of life pressing back against the chaos of the cosmos. She leaned further into him, her head tilting slightly, the delicate brush of her alien hair along his neck sending a shiver through both of them. He shifted slightly, pressing her closer, and for a few seconds, the roar of distant suns and the cataclysmic ballet above seemed to quiet, as if even the universe paused to honor the gravity of their connection. Time stretched and compressed unpredictably. Moments became measured not by seconds or light years, but by the shared rhythm of their presence. Her body curved naturally against his, her hands tracing invisible paths along his chest and arms, memorizing every subtle line, every slight tremor. He could feel the depth of her trust, the surrender implicit in the way she allowed herself to cling, and it filled him with awe. She was a creature capable of surviving cosmic calamities, capable of navigating interstellar storms that could wipe out entire systems, but in his arms she allowed herself to be vulnerable, entirely dependent, entirely present. And in that dependence, he discovered a force far stronger than any gravitational pull, far more anchoring than the spin of planets, the human capacity to hold, to protect, to love. The falling suns continued their arcs, meteors ignited across the atmosphere, and planetary fragments spun past in slow, radiant chaos. Yet she felt untouchable, anchored in a way the universe could not disrupt. Her glowing strands of hair wove over him like threads of light, wrapping around his arm, across his chest, around his shoulder, as though physically embodying the gravity she felt pressing inward. Her breath mingled with his in soft, even pulses, creating a rhythm older than thought itself, and he adjusted ever so slightly to cradle her more fully, as if his arms were the only constant that could hold her steady against the storm. Every flash of cosmic fire above, every streak of molten light, every distant planetary collision was absorbed into the orbit of their shared presence. She pressed closer, and for the first time she allowed herself to feel that perhaps the most powerful force in the universe was not the gravitational pull of stars, nor the energy of suns, nor the arc of orbiting planets. It was trust. It was intimacy. It was the weightless, unshakable gravity of two beings choosing to hold on to each other when everything else fell apart. And as another blazing sun streaked across the sky, leaving a trail of incandescent debris, she clung even tighter, her alien form glowing brighter, her pulse quickening. And she felt a truth that no cosmic event could ever negate. In his arms, she was home. And in that orbit, she was unstoppable. The sky continued to erupt in violent, radiant displays, but she no longer noticed the falling sun streaking across the horizon. Her entire focus was on him, pressed close against his chest, her arms wrapped firmly around his torso, as if the very act of holding on could tether her to some unshakable truth in the midst of cosmic chaos. Her luminescent hair flowed over his shoulders, strands of radiant light curling and drifting like miniature auroras, catching the glow of the exploding suns above and creating a halo of warmth around them both. Each pulse of her bioluminescence mirrored the subtle rise and fall of his chest beneath her, arcs of light weaving in tandem with the rhythm of his heartbeat. She inhaled deeply,
the scent of his warmth and the faint tang of ozone from the nearby stellar activity mingling in her senses. Her alien physiology, capable of detecting faint gravitational distortions and electromagnetic fluctuations light years away, registered the chaotic energy outside, but her mind filtered it entirely, focusing instead on the gravity of his presence. Every tremor of his muscles, every micro-adjustment as he shifted to accommodate her more fully, spoke to her in a language older than words, a language of constancy, of care, of unwavering presence. Her hands traced along his chest and back, memorizing the contours, the warmth, the subtle vibrations that told her he was alive, that he was real, that he was here for her. The meteors streaked across the sky like fiery tears. Planetary fragments collided in arcs of molten debris, and distant suns flared violently. Yet, inside the orbit of his arms, she felt untouchable. The human beneath her radiated a constancy she had never known, a gravitational pull that anchored her more firmly than any planet, any star, any cosmic force she had encountered. She leaned her head fully into the curve of his shoulder, feeling the pulse of his life through the subtle vibrations of his chest. Every breath, every heartbeat, every micro-shift of muscle communicated safety, trust, and care in a way that transcended words, transcended species, transcended even the chaotic majesty of the universe around them. She adjusted herself slightly, her hands tracing arcs over his arms, pressing against his back, feeling the warmth radiate through his skin. Her alien form, designed to survive extremes of radiation, gravity, and heat, was paradoxically fragile in his embrace. She quivered faintly, not from fear of the stars falling around them, but from the intensity of the connection, from the sheer weightlessness of being fully known and fully held. The glow of her hair brightened as she pressed closer, a soft, luminescent reflection of the cosmic light outside, her strands intertwining with the rhythm of his arms around her. For the first time in centuries of interstellar travel, she surrendered entirely, allowing herself to be vulnerable, to be humanized by the gravity of being loved. He could feel the subtle shifts of her body, the tiny tremors, the minute contractions and releases of muscle that communicated every emotion she could not speak aloud. Her pulse had accelerated in response to the celestial chaos outside, yet her trust in him created a counterbalance, an orbit of stability that grounded both of them. He pressed a soft kiss to the top of her head, letting his arms tighten imperceptibly, drawing her even closer. She exhaled slowly against his chest, and he felt it reverberate through him, a wave of surrender, awe, and relief that made even the fury of the falling suns pale in comparison. Above, the planets continued their silent revolutions, spinning with mathematical precision in arcs of reflection, while distant stars blinked and flared in distant galaxies. She felt the subtle tremor of these distant worlds through the station's sensors, but they were insignificant. She was anchored here, pressed to him, her heartbeat aligning with his, her body attuned to the gentle rhythm of his presence. Every pulse, every micro-movement, every subtle adjustment of his hands around her shoulders and back was a communication of constancy and care that reached deeper than words ever could. Minutes stretched into what felt like eternity. The chaos of falling suns, meteors streaking like sparks, and planetary collisions became a mere spectacle, a dramatic backdrop to the intimate gravity of their shared presence. Her alien senses, capable of detecting phenomena light years away, focused solely on him, the human who had become the center of her universe, the unshakable axis upon which her heart now revolved. She pressed herself closer still, her glowing hair weaving over him like threads of living light, creating a private constellation around them, arcs of luminescence pulsing softly in response to the rhythm of their bodies. She tilted her head slightly, brushing her luminescent strands along his neck, exhaling into the warmth of his shoulder. The act was simple, yet it carried a profound depth of emotion: trust, surrender, intimacy, and belonging all rolled into one. The universe, in its infinite chaos, could not touch the orbit of their connection. He was her constant, her gravity, the anchor in a cosmos that threatened to tear everything apart. And she, in her radiant, alien form, became a living reflection of the wonder and beauty of that trust, her every pulse of light and breath of warmth affirming the strength of what they shared. As another flaming sun streaked across the horizon, igniting clouds of debris in brilliant arcs, she wrapped herself fully around him, letting her weight press into his chest, letting her alien form mold into the rhythm of his human body. Every heartbeat, every exhalation, every micro-motion of her arms and hands deepened the gravity between them. And as they held each other under the storm of falling suns, she realized a truth no cosmic event could ever disprove. The universe may rage and burn, but the strongest, most enduring force was here, in the orbit of their bodies, their trust, and their love. The sky had become an inferno of motion and light, suns tearing across the heavens in molten streaks of gold, crimson, and violet, meteors slicing arcs of fire across the black void, and planetary fragments spinning in silent rebellion. Yet she clung to him as if the chaos above had no power to touch the orbit they had formed. Her head rested against his shoulder, warm and soft, and he held her as though the universe itself might unravel if he let go. Every subtle movement of her alien body pressed against him was a declaration. She trusted him with her gravity, with her weight, with her very being. And in that trust, he felt the infinite responsibility and the profound beauty of what it meant to be human, to anchor another soul in the midst of a universe that knew nothing of mercy. Her bioluminescent hair glowed in delicate waves, arcs of radiant light wrapping across his chest and shoulders, capturing the brilliance of the falling suns above and refracting it into a private constellation around them. She shifted slightly, pressing closer, and he adjusted automatically, instinctively, as if his muscles remembered a choreography older than memory itself. Her warmth seeped into him, a pulse of life and energy that seemed to stabilize the universe itself in miniature, making the chaos outside irrelevant. Each of her breaths, each subtle tremor, each gentle pulse of luminescent glow communicated a depth of emotion beyond words, and he responded in kind, letting his arms mold to her shape, letting his heartbeat sync with hers in a rhythm older than stars. The falling suns flared violently, casting shadows across their forms, yet within the gravity of their embrace, light and shadow became inconsequential. Meteors ignited like sparks from the forge of creation, yet she remained firmly pressed against him, letting her trust radiate outward in waves that even the cosmos seemed to respect. Her alien senses, capable of perceiving radiation and gravitational shifts light years away, focused entirely on him, the steady, grounding presence of a human willing to hold her when all else fell apart. In that focus, she found sanctuary. In that presence, she discovered a force stronger than any black hole, more constant than any orbit, and more beautiful than any celestial explosion. He could feel the subtle quiver of her muscles as she relaxed further into his hold, her pulse quickening with the intensity of the cosmic display, but steadying under his unwavering presence. He pressed his lips lightly to the top of her head, feeling the warmth radiate through her hair and down into her body. The alien light of her bioluminescence intensified for a moment, casting soft arcs across his arms and chest, reflecting the brilliance of the dying suns above. Yet he knew this glow was not merely a reaction to the sky. It was a reflection of the trust,
the surrender, and the connection they shared. Each heartbeat, each breath, each infinitesimal shift of muscle communicated a truth older than time itself. In his arms, she was home, and in her presence, he was more human than he had ever felt.
The universe outside continued its violent performance. Suns streaked across the horizon, meteors flared like living fire, and planetary fragments collided silently in distant arcs. But for them, all of it was background, a dramatic theater upon which the intimacy of their orbit played out. Her arms tightened around him, her head pressed against his chest, and he held her with a quiet strength, a human constancy that became the fulcrum of their private universe. She tilted her head slightly, brushing her glowing hair across his collarbone, exhaling softly into his warmth, and he felt that simple action reverberate through him, anchoring him just as firmly as he anchored her. Time stretched indefinitely. Seconds became minutes, minutes became hours, yet the rhythm of their shared presence remained eternal. Her alien form, once a creature of solitary cosmic wanderings, had surrendered fully into the orbit of his gravity. And he, in turn, discovered that his humanity had meaning far beyond survival or exploration. It had the power to stabilize, to anchor, to protect, and to love in a way the universe could neither predict nor control. Her pulse, synchronized with his, radiated in gentle waves through her glowing strands, arcs of light wrapping around them like the orbiting arcs of distant planets. Every tiny motion, every subtle tremor, every faint flicker of bioluminescence communicated depth, trust, and a love that transcended the distance between species. Another sun streaked across the heavens, flaring with a brilliance that threatened to blind any observer. She pressed herself tighter, her entire form melting into his, her weight pressing down with both vulnerability and strength. And he responded instinctively, cradling her as if to say the universe might collapse, but they would remain intact. She exhaled again, a soft, long sigh that carried awe, trust, and a profound sense of belonging, and he felt it pulse through him, sinking his own breath to hers. Around them, meteors flared and planetary fragments tumbled through space, yet they remained suspended in their own private orbit, a gravitational bond that no celestial fire could sever. He tilted his head, brushing a kiss against the side of her temple, and felt her quiver with delight, a subtle tremor of connection that sent warmth racing through him. Her luminescence pulsed gently, responding to his touch and the quiet words unspoken between them. Words had become unnecessary. Everything was communicated through the gravity of presence, the rhythm of heartbeat, and the gentle, infinite pull of trust and love. She was entirely his, in a way that transcended ownership or possession, and he was entirely hers, in a way that transcended comprehension or expectation. As the last of the falling suns traced arcs across the horizon, burning themselves out in a cascade of fading fire, she exhaled once more, resting fully against him. The meteors dwindled, planetary fragments continued their slow dance in the distance, and the sky settled into a quieter, more subdued brilliance. Yet the gravity between them remained, unwavering and absolute. In the midst of cosmic chaos, amidst celestial destruction, they had found constancy in each other. He pressed his arms around her firmly, and she clung with perfect trust, her alien form glowing softly, a beacon in the dark expanse. And in that quiet, fragile, yet infinitely profound moment, she realized a truth no falling sun, no meteor, no planetary collision could alter. She had found her home, her gravity, her sanctuary. And he, in holding her, discovered the ultimate power of humanity, the ability to anchor, to protect, and to create a universe of love, warmth, and constancy amidst the chaos of the stars. Together,
They remained under the sky of falling suns, clinging to each other, their private orbit a testament to the enduring force of connection, trust, and love that no cosmic event could ever break.